Alright, hello, welcome back to the channel. Are we rolling? Yes, we are. Alright, so I wanted to make a little follow-up video on the videos that I was making last week, talking about this little mini insurrection that occurred in the American Capitol, led by a bunch of conservative right-wing petit bourgeoisie. And a lot of the feedback that I got from my last video was kind of focusing in on how this movement was led, or at least composed, primarily of that sort of people, like upper kind of middle class managerial sorts of people, which is something that I've seen repeated not just by leftists, but also by people on the kind of liberal center side of the spectrum. And what I find particularly interesting about this, what I really want to kind of get at is what I want to bring into this is the Maoist conception of new democracy, just to kind of cut to the chase, and to give a little bit of context on what that is. Mao, just like in Russia, was doing his revolution in a semi-feudal, in fact, it was more feudal than in Russia, China was, context, which is, breaking from the Marxist orthodoxy, which says that, in order to do a socialist or communist revolution, you need to first move through capitalism in order to have built up the necessary material forces or productive forces. But, Mao didn't have that luxury. Although, later on during the Maoist period, I mean, they tried to do that, but under the control of the Communist Party. But anyway, when Mao was doing his revolution in the early days of it, he was fighting against the Kuomintang, which is a kind of nationalist, colonial Chinese political party that was in control of China at the time. So it was a party that was backed by the Japanese, and that he was able to get a lot of support from the population by appealing to Chinese nationalism, because the majority of the Chinese people didn't like being under colonial rule. And the way that Mao was able to unite the Chinese population was by coining this term called New Democracy, which was supposed to be a coalition of all the various classes that existed in China at the time. The peasantry, the petit bourgeoisie, there are four of them: peasantry, the petit bourgeoisie, the national bourgeoisie, and the urban proletariat, I believe. So those are the four classes that existed in China. Some of them were more numerous than others. The urban proletariat there was really not much of that in China at this time, the early first half of the 20th century. But they still had a lot of political power, these kind of minoritarian social classes. So his project was to unite all of these classes in order to overthrow the Kuomintang, this colonial party, this colonial regime. And the way he did this by forming a coalition with all these classes. It's kind of, in a way, I guess I feel like a lot of socialists and communists today would feel like that is in some way a compromise, or in some way, not the correct line to take, is that you should, socialism is for the working class, and you should really focus on organizing the working class. And to a large extent, I agree that our focus should be on the working class, and especially the most oppressed strata of the working class, the wretched of the earth, as it were. But I think it's very important to think about class as a spectrum. It is not just two poles. I mean, it's a spectrum defined by two poles, the working class and the bourgeoisie. And as Marxists, we divide society up according to individuals' relationship to the means of production, but it is still a spectrum. There are, middle class, there are these petit bourgeoisie, there are the PMC, the professional managerial class. There are all these kinds of different, strata along the way between these two opposite poles. And I don't think it's helpful to simplify things into reduce this into a matter of working class versus bourgeoisie. In fact, I think it is very important to have a plan for uniting with the people who exist along the way between these two different poles. So I think that trying to get back to this little insurrection that occurred, led by the PMC or the petit bourgeoisie, the PB. I hope you can see where I'm going with this. Basically, I think that we as leftists should be not stymied by any potential cultural opposition that we have to these kinds of people just because they're conservative or white or in a different economic bracket to us, or have this different slightly different relationship to the means of production. In fact, the petit bourgeoisie are our allies. They need to be in order to overcome the true enemy, the fundamental, essential enemy, which is the bourgeoisie. I think that we could do a lot. We could take a lot from the lessons of China. I think that China is always more relevant. The Chinese Revolution is always more relevant and important for contemporary leftist, socialist, communists to be thinking about than Russia has ever been. It's always been a mistake that Russia, became as popular on the left, became like this symbol, the real thing that everybody thinks about and talks about over China. China has always been more important. There's China is where the open questions lie, is where the theoretical innovations lie. And, this concept of new democracy is one of those. This idea of forming a coalition with classes, regardless of any kind of cultural or social division between these classes. This is really necessary. It's going to be necessary in order to overcome the real enemy. But that's all I'll say for now. I'll try to do a follow-up on this topic, so stay tuned for that.